Welcome to the Sasquatch Outpost podcast, episode 73. I'm your host, Jim Myers.
And I'm your co-host, Sybilla Irwin.
Woohoo, Sybilla. How are you this evening?
I am fantastic. Happy to be here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great as well. And we've got lots to talk about tonight. We decided that instead of having a guest tonight, it's not because our guest backed out, which is often the case, but we decided on purpose to just have an episode where Sybilla and I could talk about some of our own experiences and theories and stuff that we've learned over the years of doing what we do. And yeah, Patricia, I'm excited to have you come in October. I'm telling you one thing, it's going to be cold in October. It's going to be, we're going to have to really bundle up for that trip, but
nice.
And
Campfires.
And Al, did you get the sculpture I sent? Did it get to you yet? I wanted to be sure that it got there safely if it has, because I sent it a few days ago. If not, it should be there any day. But we'll see what Al answers here. But anyway, I just love our chat group. I mean, y'all are long before the show starts, y'all are in there talking to each other and asking each other what's going on. It's really fun. And a bunch of you were in the Bigfoot Adventure Weekend this past weekend that we had in Bailey. Okay, Al, it should be there soon, hopefully.
Awesome.
So every year in Bailey, this is 5 years now. We've been doing what we call the Bigfoot Adventure Weekend. Alan McGargle and Jesse Morgan and I have organized this. Yeah, new glasses. My glasses need prisms because I have a condition where one of my eyes, when I get tired, if I don't use a prism, they get really tired for one thing, and then it wanders. And so the prisms kind of keep my eyes together. So every once in a while, I have to upgrade, downgrade, whatever. But thank you for noticing. I appreciate that. They're stylish. So and I ordered them online. You never know when you order glasses online how they're going to be when you get them. So I'm not sure I like them yet, but that's life. So anyway, the Bigfoot Adventure Weekend, I think we had 35 people who came, and they came from Minnesota. Some guys drove from Minnesota. We had Nebraska, New Mexico, Texas, Arizona. They come from all over. And from several places around Colorado. And the way we do it is Thursday night, we take a small group of 10 people. We go out somewhere camping where we've had activity, and it's kind of our extreme night, quote unquote. It's not really extreme. I mean, we do a lot more extreme stuff during the year, but I wouldn't take people necessarily where I would go for an extreme experience, but we take 10 people out, and Jason, Frank, and a few other people went out a night before. The rest of us got out there, and they said in the middle of the night, a Sasquatch, they assume, ran behind their tents from a distance away. They could hear it jogging through the camp, and I guess they found some tracks or something. So then everybody comes back to Bailey. Now, in the midst of this, we had this big event. We have 35 people there. We have a big event that goes all weekend long. In the midst of that, I had my daughter's engagement party on Friday, and then my other daughter's baby shower on Saturday. So I was going back and forth between all these events. And so I was pooped by the end of the weekend. But we Friday. So last year at this event, we had a very interesting experience because there's a couple who came with their 10-year-old son, Luke. And before the camp even started, we were all setting up our tents. Luke goes on the edge of the campsite. This is in Bailey, all right? It's in Bailey. It's not even on the outskirts of Bailey. But behind this, the hill goes up, and if you kept walking, you get to a wilderness area. So it's not unheard of that Sasquatch could come in. So anyway, Luke's walking around, and he comes back to Jason. He said, "Hey, come here. Let me show you something." And he shows him this track. And he said, "Is this what we're supposed to be looking for?" And I'm going to show you. So Jason cast the track, and it was kind of on a downhill slope. So I remember looking at it, and all the plaster kind of flowed to the front of it. And I thought, this is gonna look like garbage when he's done, but it didn't. And after they cast it, then they made a silicone mold and recast it. So Jason made this for me to put it in our museum, which I am absolutely going to do. But I'm going to show you. I'm going to share my screen, and this is the track. So can y'all see that?
Not yet. There it is.
There we go. So it's a phenomenal track. He dyed the actual foot to differentiate between the dirt, but Steve Wolf says you're his Texan, favorite Texan Sybilla.
Thank you, Steve Wolf.
But this track, if you measure from the end of the big toe to the bottom of the heel, it's 16 inches. And this was right in our camp, all right? So stuff happens there. And I remember so during the weekend, we'll take people out, and we take them out Friday night. Then we do some training on casting and stuff on Saturday. Then we take them out Saturday afternoon to an area, and then we go back to the same place Saturday night. So my group last year, I took them out, and we didn't have much happen. So we came back to camp late, and I remember looking up the hill, and there was a Sasquatch sitting up there looking at us. I could see his eyes clearly glowing in the dark. And I thought, why are we all going all over the place in this county when they're coming to our camp, and all we have to do is sit here and wait for him to come look at us? Yeah. So this year they didn't come in, but Friday night during the night, we were all camping. I heard this big bang about 3:00 in the morning. I happened to be awake, and I thought, I wonder what that was. And it sounded like a piece of wood being broken or thrown or something. So in the morning, two of the guys, Jason and a guy named George, said that a big log had been tossed between their two tents. And Jason had a 7-gallon water container with a spigot that you could put on a table. And something had picked that up apparently and just tossed it about 10 feet. And when it landed, it broke the spigot off the side of it. And so that's what I heard, either the log or the water container being tossed. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know who would come into camp and do that. if it wasn't our hairy friends, somebody was intent on, but to toss a 7-gallon water container, you got to be pretty strong. Those things weigh a lot. I've got a few 5-galloners, and I couldn't toss those for nothing. And this was even heavier. So anyway, that's what happened this year. And then we went out Saturday night. Wayne's group, Wayne and I were in generally the same area, and Wayne's group, they were sitting on some rocks, and he said about 20 feet behind him, and these are the quietest woods I've ever been in, the woods around Bailey, just dead quiet, no bugs, nothing, no birds, just quiet. And he said behind him, they all heard this big crack and thud, and this tree branch was broken off a tree and dropped on the ground, and they all leaped up, what was that, and turned around, and there was nothing there. They could see the evidence, but there was nothing there. So John, you asked whether there's more tracks. They found a couple of other impressions, but nothing that they could cast, just that one track, because it was kind of half in an anthill. That was the thing there. So it was deeper dirt and stuff. And so in my group, we went out and there was a camper. Every place there could be campers, there were campers. And so I knew there was an unused road I wanted to walk my team down. And there were some campers, a bunch of guys sitting there. And I pulled in, and just to be polite, I went over and said, "Hey, do you mind if I park? And we're just going to go for a hike." And the guy goes, "No, do you mind if I rummage through your truck?" I was like, that was kind of a weird answer. I said, "Yeah, I kind of mind if you rummage through my truck." "Do you mind if I shoot your truck?" I mean, come on, we're going to one up each other here. So I parked my truck, and we hiked off down this road. We got 3/4 of a mile down this road away from them, and we could still hear them talking around their fire. I thought, these are just the weirdest, quietest woods. But we were laughing and knocking and stuff, and we heard 4 tree knocks separated by about 10 minutes from 4 different directions. So somebody was out watching us and knocking, but we never saw any eye glow, never heard anything else. So that it was a fairly uneventful weekend, but we never know. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
Odd haunts, you asked if there are photos where the track was found. There are, and I've asked the family and Jason to send me photos of where they cast it and when they had the plaster in the cast, so that I can put all that in the museum with the cast so people can see the story. But I don't have those photos with me, unfortunately. But I'm telling the truth. It was a cast we did last year. So, well, Sybilla.
That was beautiful track. That was beautiful casting.
It was
beautiful.
And
the toes, man, they're beautiful.
They were clear toes. And so Jason said all the years he's been doing this, he said he's never cast one that clear, that big, and with toes so clearly defined. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
I think a lot of casts. I think a lot of people think that those really great footprints are easy to come by, and it's just not so. A lot of the times the substrate that they're in is just like either hard packed or gravel, or some substrate, or tons of a huge leaf bed or something. It's really difficult to in all the years I've been doing this, I've really only seen, actually it was a butt print. It wasn't even a footprint.
A butt print. Huh.
Yeah, it was a massive butt print, and then a little footprint that was, it was some seriously deep mud, and it looked like the parent had sat down in this mud, and then maybe, took an infant and started to set it down, but it started to sink in the mud so much that he or she actually lifted it back up. But you could kind of see. And I did make a cast of that, but I didn't have enough plaster. I mean,
I know that takes a huge amount of plaster.
Yeah, I didn't have enough hydrocal I mean, this butt print was literally like 3 feet wide, and the mud was so perfect that you could see the hair impression on the butt cheeks. Like, it was amazing. But I have never cast like one of those perfect footprints.
Me neither.
In all this time.
And a butt print would probably take about 10 pounds of plaster. I mean, you would have had to be carrying around a ton of plaster.
Yeah.
This year there were some more tracks as well. Dana was with us, but that one last year was the clearest. In fact, put Mark's comment up here. I want to reply to Mark. Still knocking on trees and casting footprints. What a joke. Well, you know what? If you think it's easy to cast footprints, then be my guest, and I would love to see what you cast, because I've been doing this 11 years. I have yet to find one good track that I could cast in Colorado.
Yeah.
And no, we don't knock every time.
Nope.
I've had some reply knocks, and few times, and I was positive there are no people around. So I don't do the same thing every time we go out, but so I don't know if your comment's based on the fact that you don't think they're real, or if you just think maybe we should be doing something different in our research. But we're going to do what we're going to do.
When you do this for a long time, you try everything. You try a whole bunch of different things.
Sure you do. And some things produce result and encounters, and some don't. And so
some might work in one region of the country, and you go to a different state and you get no interest whatsoever. It's you never know what you're going to get. That's the thing. Like, there's no, I mean, in fact, if it was that easy that you could just go get a footprint every time, or you could get a response every time, well then there'd be a whole lot of it. But it's not predictable like that.
Yeah. If someone knew that they could see a Sasquatch every time they went out, man, you could say to people, give me $1 million and I'll show you a Sasquatch right now. And I wouldn't do that, but there's just no guarantees. And I tell people when I take them out, and I told the group when I took them out last weekend, I said, people accuse me all the time of putting a plant in the woods to make noises, knock on trees. And I said, I don't have any friends that would go sit in the woods for 3 hours for me alone and wait for me to show up. And no one ever knows where I'm going. They don't know when I'm going. They don't know who I'm going with, and they don't know where I'm going. So those who've claimed to be out in the woods to, hoax us, sorry, that's just not possible. And so I don't pay attention to those remarks anymore. I know that they're because they don't understand what we're doing. And so we try to have integrity, and I know Sybilla's the same way. If I didn't,
all you have.
If we didn't do things honestly the way we say we're doing it, where we're going out in the woods, what happens, what doesn't happen. If we find a track, it's because we looked long and hard. And so then I couldn't look at myself in the mirror and feel comfortable, because Sasquatch, when we go out into the woods, we're in their kingdom, and we're there really with their blessing. If they want us to see them, then we'll see them or hear them, but they're in control. We're not in control. When we go in the woods, they are in control 100%. So,
well, I lived on that habituation property for 5 years. Mm-hmm. There was not a single thing that I can tell you that I could predict on any kind of a basis. I tried everything. I tried the chalkboard. I tried, I put gifts, I put food gifts, but I also did trinkets. And, the only thing they played with any consistency was these little green squeaky frogs. Like those, for some reason, I mean, who knows why, but for some reason I would place them in different, I had 3 of them to start with, and I would place them, one was on a stump and one was, I would put them in different places, and then I would check on them the next day. And sometimes they wouldn't be touched. Sometimes one would be gone. Sometimes then the next day 2 would be gone. I mean, there's no predicting. Sometimes I would walk out the back door and there would be a wood knock, but that didn't happen every day.
No.
And I don't think they were around every day. I think maybe they'd be around once a week, or maybe they'd be around, like I did notice there was a cycle with the moon where I'd have more activity, and it doesn't make sense, but I'd have more activity on a full moon than in the dark of the moon. And I don't know, a lot of people say, well, that makes no sense if they're hiding. Well, like you said, they're in control.
Yeah.
They would never do anything the same way twice. And they would just do things that you didn't expect. Like you'd walk out and there'd be a 5-gallon bucket that had been sitting there for, a month, would suddenly be gone, and then maybe a week later it would come back. Or, I used to collect bones. I used to go for long walks and I would find bones. I don't know why I do this, but, I think they're beautiful. They're like, to me, they're like little sculptures. And I found somebody, I guess a cow had died, and this cow had basically turned into these beautiful white bones. And so sometimes I'd find ribs, I'd find bones, and I started a collection that was at the back door of the house. And it was there literally for months and months. And my neighbors had pit bulls that ran around, everybody's property, never touched these bones. And then one day, an investigator from Colorado came to visit me, him and his wife. We walked around, we found a beautiful arch structure that was literally lashed down. The next morning, I walked down to the berm to see what was going on down there. And there was a rib bone, like a deer rib bone, on the way down. And I thought, and I picked it up, and, you ooh and ah over things. I mean, they obviously know I collect bones. So here they've given me a gift. I thank them for it. And then I turned around and I walked back, and I'm going to put it on my bone pile. The entire bone pile is gone. There's not a single, and there had to have been like 25 bones. Not a single bone is there.
And they had been there for a while, right?
They had been there for months.
Yeah.
Like maybe 6 months, and nothing had touched them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's.
And I'm sure you feel the same way. They are so highly intelligent. I don't want to insult them either. When I'm doing gifting and things, initially I was thinking they were like human infants or something, kind of brute, stupid creatures. They are far from that. And so I'm trying to find ways to interact with them that would challenge my intelligence if I was the one coming and looking. And so I'm thinking, we know they communicate with each other. We know they try to communicate with us. What we're trying to do now, I mean, neither of us are still trying to prove they exist. That's a long since given. So we're both trying to figure out, how do you communicate with them in ways that make sense to them and make sense to us? And so that's the hard part, is even in the gifting, is they'll leave us gifts, and I'm trying to understand what they've left, and I'm sure they're looking at our gifts. I'm sure when people get rocks in a gifting site, polished rocks, it's because somebody else gave them those rocks. They've been carrying them around, and then they give them to somebody else, so.
Or they see you pick up rocks. Like they watch what you pick up. If you pick up feathers, they gift you with feathers. If they, whatever you pick up, they're going to start gifting you with that. And sometimes you just don't know how to interpret what it is they do leave for you. Like, my son and I had an event where one of them snuck up really close to us. And I mean within probably 15 yards of us, without making a sound on a substrate that there's no way, but it happened. There's no explanation for how this thing got so close. Well, after that event, and I guess Nathan broke a stick, and it was super, super loud. Like, it was so loud that it made this, it literally sounded like a gunshot when he broke this really dry stick. And so this thing broke away from us and then ran to the bottom of my neighbor's property and then started popping its teeth. And if you've never heard something pop in its teeth at you, it's
I've heard bears. I've never heard a Sasquatch do it.
Oh my goodness. And this was probably at least 175, to 200 feet away. But you could hear it as clear as day. And that's when my son turned to me and he goes, "I love you, Mom, but there is no way in hell I'm staying down here tonight. I'm gone." And he left and I went with him. But anyway, we went away for the weekend. And when we came back, there were two, I started, came in, I always check. They took all the peaches off the tree. Every single peach was gone off the tree. And then I started walking down to the berm, and there were two sticks that were laid like parallel, like this. They were exactly the same length. And then off of the top of the sticks was another stick that was like a flag. Also, these two sticks were the same length, parallel with two sticks like right on the top, like kind of like that. And then, pointing down to the berm, and then there was another pair of parallel sticks pointed exactly to where Nathan and I had that event.
Wow. Yeah. And again, that's not a brute creature. That's not a gorilla that's doing this type of communication with you.
And I don't know what it meant, don't know what it meant, except it did point, the two that pointed to the area of that event, and then the other two with the flags. Like, I know, like you said, I know they're trying to communicate with us, but we don't know what it means. And I wish we did.
And they're probably as frustrated as we are trying to communicate with us. And Mind Speak, Jeff mentioned Mind Speak in the chat. Yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. If someone gets Mind Speak, how do you know it's a Bigfoot versus an alien or something else? You really don't. And so, unless they appear to you in physical form and are speaking to you where you know that it's coming from that Sasquatch in front of you, which would be a very scary phenomenon. So, but Sybilla, you mentioned something the other day that intrigued me, and let's talk about that for a second. You said, so tell us about the one you've recently been, the witness you've been working with, and what she said, and then I haven't noticed what you noticed, so I would love everyone to hear what you've noticed.
Well, I've been working with witnesses since 2008. And what I told Jim is that I've kind of noticed recently, and recently is kind of, I would say in the last 3 to 5 years, that more people are approaching me that are having sightings with human faces. Like, they'll flat out tell you, what I saw did not have any apish features whatsoever. It was massive, 8 feet or plus, and totally hair covered, but the face was 100% human. And I'm going to be publishing a witness account with her artwork this week. I'm doing the editing on it right now, and she said the most interesting thing to me. She said that she didn't even believe what she saw was a Sasquatch because it was so human. She wrestled with it for a while because she thought it was like one of the most handsome men that she'd ever seen in her life. And she was 8 feet away from this guy.
Wow. So
it wasn't that she didn't get a good look at it. She got a really good look at it with beautiful golden brown eyes, and but it was hair covered and at least 8 feet tall, maybe more. But I think it makes me wonder how many people are hesitant to come forward because the baseline, since 1967 has been the Patterson footage.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder, like, how many people are still out there that are kind of scared to come forward because they are like, that's not what I saw at all. Like
Right.
what I saw was like a beautiful human, had a beautiful, a beautiful human face. And they doubt it was, our idea, our whole perception of Sasquatch has become, I mean, look at the AI art, look at, it's all like gorilla-ish looking.
Yeah.
And so that's not what, I just noticed in the last 3 to 5 years, more people are coming forward that literally saw either a human face, or they're said, what I saw was a giant, like a giant man, like a biblical giant man with a human face. So I think it's kind of interesting. And I just wonder if it's because people are now starting to feel maybe a little bit more comfortable, coming forward saying this was human. This was a human.
Which you're right. There's a lot of sentiment out there that people don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that they're human. I want to hear that they're a big ape monster. They think like an ape. They act like an ape. It goes against the grain of a lot of researchers today to believe that they're human. And I said to Sybilla, okay, this is a stretch. Is it possible that there, in the few cases of inbreeding between humans and Sasquatch, that the human gene pool has gotten into the Sasquatch gene pool that's caused more and more human traits to come out? Or were they just always like that and people just never wanted to describe them the way they really saw them? So,
well, when we had Harvey Pratt on just a couple of weeks ago, and then you look at the artwork that he was doing with David Paulides for the Hoopa Project, they were very human.
They're human. And he did just like you. He would go back and forth with the witness until the witness said, that is what I saw. So I think with your drawings and Harvey's, the witness is giving testimony that is what they saw, and they were human. They looked human. They're just massively big and hairy. So DJ, I saw that you mentioned that you're moving to Colorado. Awesome. Please reach out to me when you get here. This is a good decision. So
I'm jealous.
Yeah. But we talked about this earlier when we were talking about what we wanted to discuss tonight. And I know you've had other encounters. And you told me you haven't actually done art for your own encounters. So you're so busy doing art for other people to help them out. You haven't done one for yourself.
Yeah.
So, which I would look forward to. And we're going to have a pre-recorded show, not this next week, but the week after, or the 13th of August. That story, I really want you to do the art for it, because that's an amazing story. But so and this is, I don't mean to be gross or whatever, but wasn't there a dog that was killed by the Sasquatch at Crittenden at one point?
Yes, there was.
One of Roger and Sissy's dogs?
Yes.
So
I think its neck was broken.
Their dislike for dogs is consistent, I think, across the country. So
well, and I think that might have been a little bit of a revenge thing, because Roger would frequently shoot at them.
Yeah.
As evident, and that evidence was literally there there was an old trailer home there, and you could see the buckshot on both the front corners of that thing, and then buckshot in the back. Like, he definitely would shoot at them, and so I think it might have been a retaliation.
Well, that's a horrible retaliation, but someone like Roger, I don't know that he probably even got that. But
and Kevin, yes, Dave Grove's sighting had very, very human features. I put some slides in the up here, then, and if we get to him, but Dave Grove's his image is in there, because it's very human, just but massive.
Yeah. Well, you've got a bunch of drawings. Show us that one of Dave's. I don't know if you can fast forward to it. And some are not human, like this one.
Yeah. Well, I kind of in the slides I put kind of everything from the spectrum. Like this is the most terrifying and apish looking thing witness sketch that I've ever done. This was from Mount Carmel, Illinois, and this was a former Navy SEAL, and he was checking a trout line, and this, he said from the time he got there, he knew something was wrong. You know how people will say that? They're like, I knew as soon as I got out of the truck, something was not right. The feeling was off. So he quickly, checked the trout lines and got right back in his truck. And this thing stepped in front of his truck. Like he turned the headlights and started moving. And this guy kind of stepped out, and here's like his body. And this is it shielding its eyes from the headlights, and it's missing a finger on that hand that he's holding up.
Huh.
I mean, can you imagine? And he said it was at least 9 feet tall.
No.
Yeah.
That's not a human face at all. And
no,
so
there is nothing human about.
That's a monster face.
Yeah. Yeah. That's terrifying.
That's very
and then there was another woman from Oregon that saw this guy on my website, and she contacted me and she said, where was this? Because I know this one, like I've seen this one, but she was in Oregon. So, we kind of wondered, okay, would this thing travel between Oregon and Illinois? I don't know, but she said she saw one that looked, she even had a name for it. She had seen it. Oof, it's scary.
And, he had scars on his head. Was that what?
Yes, he did. Okay. He had scars on his head. He was, obviously had been in some entanglements with something.
Or somebody.
Yeah. And this is so, like I said, this is more of like on the apish spectrum. This was another one. This is from Yellowstone. This was a woman and she was only 18 when this happened, and she was camping with her father. They literally just got to Yellowstone. Now, part of the backstory that's really interesting about this is there had been fires in Yellowstone that year, and she kind of feels like the fires had maybe pushed this thing out, and that's why it was so angry and maybe hungry. She doesn't know. They had just put their tent up, and she was getting ready to cook lunch, and this thing threw a bowling ball sized rock just over her head and screamed at her. And her and her dad literally just ran for the car, and they got in the car and they took off, and this thing was still throwing rocks at their car and chased them, chased them. They left everything. They left their tent. It has everything, and chased them down the Forest Service road.
And what I find interesting, Sybilla, is there are stories of them with canines and stories where they have no canines. And I don't know if that's different kinds of Sasquatch or, these are very pronounced canines, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. And there have been some witnesses that have seen even like a little bit of like when the mouth is closed, even a little bit of canine sticking out on the bottom lip. Yeah. But not always. A lot of times they're just like straight, flat, big, like big chiclets. But that's terrifying. Sure. You can and this woman still is so deeply disturbed. she's never gotten over it. She still
has like a nightmare.
She still has nightmares to this day, and she's in her 50s now, and she's not gotten over it. This is this one from North Texas. Now look at that face. And this was a Native American, a man in Denton, Texas, that had this thing just right outside his house. And he figured out over time that it was hungry. Like it just hung around. And he had some like prize. You know how some people raise like the real expensive chickens, and they're like prize chickens. And he was concerned about this thing eating his chickens. So he was, as it started, he was going out the door to feed his chickens, and this thing was just on the other side of the fence. So he just stepped back inside of the fence. Now, here's one of those crazy things, guys. Everybody always says, where's the photographs, where the stuff? I asked this man, I said, because this thing hung around for like 30 minutes. Like he went inside, he smoked a cigarette, he made a cup of coffee. And I asked him, I said, well, did it occur to you to like take a photo? And he said, no.
Yeah, it's strange.
It was never a thought. Like, he just wanted it to go away. He just wanted it to go away. He didn't know what it was. Anyway, he got up at one point, looked out the window, and it had moved back from the fence a little bit. So he took his shotgun, and he thought he put some little red potatoes in his coat pocket, and he stepped outside, and this thing, it was squatted down. Oh, that's what so he looked outside, and this thing was squatted down over with a flat rock, and it was beating something, like it had some roots or something. And that's what made him realize maybe this thing is just hungry. So that's when he put the potatoes in his pocket. Anyway, he walked outside, and he took a red potato, and he threw it over the fence, and it never took its eyes off him, but it went over, it picked up the potato, it sniffed it and licked it and popped it in his mouth. So he threw the other potatoes, and it picked up picked up all the potatoes he threw, and then it turned around and started to walk off, and then it stopped, and then it turned around and looked at him and grunted, and then it left.
Like a thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But look at the size of that. Look at the chest and the shoulders. OMG.
But they've got to be hungry at times, and I'm sure they're grateful for whatever help they can get. And I think their actions are interpreted as aggression when all they're trying to say is, hey, do you have anything you can share with me?
Yeah. Well, I think you view something that's just so massive. Like he said, it was between 900 and 1,000 pounds, and it's so, with a face like you've never seen, like that doesn't look like anything you've ever seen. He didn't call it a monster, but the sad thing was he had grandchildren that he said frequently came to stay with him and his wife, and he's ended up selling the farm that had been in his family because he was afraid that something might happen to his grandchildren. Like, once he knew that it was there, he sold the place and moved away. And I just think that's so sad.
Yeah.
And then the one next to it is a female. Look at her face. Like,
what a looker.
Yeah, I mean, but she's not human.
No. And I know you've done some that were really, one looked like a Native American when he was leaning around the tree snarling. That scares people when they come into our museum, because they just think, wow, I don't want to see something like that.
And this female was seen with twins, and she looks like some kind of a cross, right? This was at a habituation site also. This one was
very similar face.
Yes, and this is, every once in a while a witness will say, hey, you've got one very much like what I saw. And this was seen in Colorado by a nurse, and then also in Montana.
Yeah, I remember this one. We got this one in our museum.
Yeah. I mean, that's, what do you, I mean, the nose is very
human.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Intense eyes. Wow. Just intense gaze. I think of all the ones you've done, that's my favorite.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And the woman that I did that for, she had a relationship with that Sasquatch since she was 5 years old.
Wow.
And this one doesn't look human either, but I mean, look how human the nose is.
Yeah.
But look at the brow. You look at the brow ridge. That's over the top. And he said that to me when I was working with him. He said, it's massive. It's just this massive. Well, genetically, it just makes you wonder.
Well, they've got to have diversity within them, the way they look and size and everything. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Several people have seen one that looks, I get a lot of comments on this that say, yeah, that looks very close to what I saw. This is from Florida, and look at its features. Real high cheekbones.
What's amazing is that they get a good enough look that they can give you enough descriptions that you can come up with this. I mean, it's
it's and I always send them the first iteration, and I tell them, hey, it may not look anything like what you saw, but don't freak out. Just we'll get it there. This is just a jumping off point, and it's amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Like they know when the cheeks are wrong. They know when the chin is wrong. They know that when the eyes aren't large enough or not far apart enough. Like they know how to fix things. They know exactly like what to tell you to do.
Yeah, I remember this one.
Yeah, that's a little juvenile that multiple people saw.
Interesting.
And
that's
just
really...
it's curious, and that's what everybody saw, was this beautiful, curious face, and it doesn't really look human.
No, but it's not a scary face either. So,
beautiful red hair.
Yeah,
which seems to be kind of common with juveniles.
Yeah.
This was Texas. This was out. This guy.
He looks like he's thinking about what to say.
He thought his brother was outside pulling a prank on him, so he literally put his hands in his, because he was shielding, because he was in the kitchen, and he thought his older brother was pranking him and his brother's girlfriend, because they were sitting at the table. So he literally went up and put his hands right up to the glass, and this thing was literally just on the other side of the glass, staring back at him. Poor guy.
I was up last night late, and Daphne was asleep, and I was downstairs, so I was at ground level, and I hear this big thump on the wall, and so I pulled we have these wooden louver blinds. I pulled the blinds up. I'm looking, and I thought, if a Sasquatch comes and goes like this in the window, I'm gonna fall backwards and faint probably, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to see outside. I thought, I'm just setting myself up to get royally scared in a second here. Nothing happened, but I don't know what it was that thumped, but
yeah, imagine seeing that face and those eyes looking right into yours.
I don't know.
This is from Tennessee, and this was two young people saw this, and it had some kind of either an abscess or a broken jaw or something, and it was all swollen to the point where it pulled down the lip, and that exposed like the bottom teeth. Yes, John, I know I do. I absolutely do. Albo's going to help me with that.
Good. Albo, you go for it, man.
It has very human, like big, large eyes. I think that's the thing I hear the most from witnesses is that the eyes are huge, like Coke bottle size.
Huge and dark, not much white, if any, sclera in their eyes.
Now we're here kind of moving a little bit more towards, that has a little bit of a Native Americans sort of look to it. This was seen by floor hunters in the Sam Houston National Forest. Very human nose.
Yeah. I think I've seen humans that look like all these.
Yeah, if you took the hair off of them,
yeah,
this is moving more.
That's towards... my Uncle Harold right there.
Yeah, they both have very human features, though. Really.
Yeah. Which would be just weird to see a Sasquatch close up that looks just like a human, and you'd be thinking, and you would expect to be able to talk to him or something because they look like a human. So
look at this hairline. Like I've heard this quite a bit, like this little widow's peak kind of hairline. Both of them have that kind of hairline where the hair starts kind of in that peak, but almost everyone that I've worked with some exceptions, the hair goes backwards. Like from that forehead, the hair flows
back that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elbow.
Mine flows back. It flowed away is what happened to my hair, but
yes, no neck. You're right, Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay, so the one on the right was seen by a man from Washington State who saw this female at 5 years old, and he was an only child, and he was always playing down by the river, and this female got so used to him being there that she showed herself to him quite often. And the amazing thing about his sketch is that about probably by now, like 15 to 17 people have picked this facial sketch as like their base. Like this was the closest to what they saw, but with changes. And so this one on the right happened first, and then this one on the left, also from Washington State, but look at the differences. Like he said, look, the one on the, he said, if we start with that one, that's very close, but the nose was completely different, and the hairline was different, and the mouth was a little bit bigger too. But so this one on the right has been picked like between 15 and 17 times as a base. So I think there's something about that one sketch that's more accurate. There must be a high degree of accuracy about it for it to be picked so many times.
Yeah.
Now these are two very different. The one on the left, I mean,
one on the left looks like Grumpy.
He was the guy was on a snowmobile, and he was trying to get home before dark. So he got off the trails and literally was cutting through the forest, like trying to get home. And he ran right into this thing. And it was just, how many times have you heard that? Like, oh my gosh, this thing was not happy that I saw it. And this thing was just like that. It was mad. Angry look. Yeah. And then the other one, it was just real peaceful. That's from Virginia.
Looks like granddad.
And the hunter was just this thing, and the hunter were playing peekaboo, and it just was. He said, Sybilla, do you remember like the troll dolls? From the.
That's what he kind of looks like.
Yeah, he said, just take one of those troll dolls to start with, because that's kind of a whole lot like what it looked like. Great big eyes, and. Yeah. But it's got kind of a sweet kind of disposition to it.
It does.
Yeah. Now this was a female, and massive eyes, like huge eyes, but yes, you're right, Steve. They don't, the ears.
You don't often see their ears.
No, they're usually covered with hair. I think also that their ears, and I've asked some witnesses that have seen ears, they say that their ears like lay flatter against their head, and that they're kind of small compared to the size of their head. And then the hair just usually like covers it.
Yeah, I don't think hearing is their greatest skill or ability necessarily.
And this was, this has kind of a sad look on its face, and the woman who I did the sketch for said it looked like really sad. But this was the first one I did that had blue eyes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And pale skin.
It's almost like, you would think, in the Middle East, you can still find Arabs with blue eyes, and it's because of the Crusades and the blue-eyed Europeans that interbred, and that gene still shows up, which makes me wonder with this one if that's not where those blue eyes come from, because that's really interesting.
Yeah, and she was up close to it because it came right up to the window.
Wow.
So she saw it up close. And then years later, I did another one that you're going to see in here that also had blue eyes. The one on the left, that's Dave Groves. Kevin Morrison was talking about that.
Yeah.
Like, look at that face.
And
like if you took the hair off of it. Yeah, if you took the hair off of it, it would just kind of look like a man. Real deep set eyes. So, and the one on the right is from Oklahoma. And, I don't know if you've heard this, Jim. Have you heard people seeing like the red eyes in the daytime? Because I have worked with two witnesses.
Yes, I have. And if their eyes can glow in the dark, if they emitted the same light in the daytime, you would think you would see that. That's scary. That just looks. Yeah. Those eyes just look angry.
Well, it was the fisherman. This thing was standing behind him, and he didn't know it. Like he'd been fishing in the same location this was his third morning there, there to catch fish that he was going to cook, for breakfast. And they'd been there for 3 days and nothing had happened. And, when you're fishing, you cast, you've got to do the back cast before you do the forward cast. And it got stuck on something. So he just thought it was some brush. and he turns around, and this thing is literally, just feet away from him, and his lure was stuck in its pectoral muscle.
Gosh.
And he said this thing was so tall, he was standing at, like his head, his eye view level was at this thing's belly button. Like it was that massive.
That big.
And
wow.
it was ticked off. And he said immediately I started apologizing, because it was stuck in its pec muscle. He said I was apologizing, and then he felt like it started growling, and his body started vibrating, and he passed out.
Wow.
It knocked him out, kind of. I think either it knocked him out or the infrasound got him or whatever. Wow. But he woke up and it was gone. There was footprints, and his fishing pole was broken into pieces, and his tackle box was smashed. And it freaked him out so bad, he covered up the tracks, and he took his tackle. He took the box and the pole, and he just threw it away, and he went back up to the tent and sat there till his wife woke up, and he didn't tell her a thing. He didn't tell her what had happened. He just told her that he was not feeling well and, wanted to go back home. And so they left, and he didn't tell her.
But just imagine if that Sasquatch would have had reason to hurt him. Yeah. If it had wanted to, especially once he fainted, Sasquatch could have torn him apart and didn't do it.
Just wrecked his gear. Like, don't
wrecked
fish
his gear. Yep. Made it clear he wasn't happy, but
but look at the red eyes. And there was also a witness that told me that there was a lens, like he saw a lens come up and down. So,
wow, that's interesting.
This is one of this man said it was that he very, very human features, yes. Massive, and it had human features. It was totally human, and he called it a biblical giant, like it was a giant.
Wow.
From biblical times. That's literally what he felt like, that it was just a clan of giants that lived where he was.
Wow. Incredible.
And here's the one on the right, the red one, that's from the man from Oklahoma. Thank you, Todd.
Now, these are like
that's the one from
Universe
Oklahoma.
Bodybuilders.
Yeah, and then the one on the left is from the man in Ontario. The man from Ontario, this thing ran in front of him. He was on a four-wheeler, and this thing ran in front of him and stopped him, like grabbed the handlebars of his four-wheelers. His face, was like this close to it before he flew over, because he was going, I don't know how fast he was going, but it literally stopped him. He actually pushed the Sasquatch back with the speed he was going.
I was going to say, wouldn't he have flown into the Sasquatch?
He flew over.
Over.
Like his body flew over. And I think he got like a concussion. But look. I know.
Yeah, big ass on steroids.
And here's the second blue-eyed Sasquatch. Yeah. Now, isn't it interesting? They were both in Massachusetts.
Interesting. Very human face.
Very human. And this thing is the one that communicated with the witness and with some hand language, like, sign language.
And well, the eyes are very similar to ours, but no canines again. So,
very human.
Teeth like us. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as it moved toward him, it put its hand on his heart and pointed to him. It was literally trying to communicate with him as he walked up to, as this thing walked up to him, trying to keep him calm. Like when this thing first realized he was there, because Ernie had his gun up, it just did this like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, and he said, this thing knew how to manage me. Like this thing, knew how to just bring my level of, energy down. And
yeah, it's crazy.
And then, of course, this guy.
Yes.
This female or whatever.
We assume it was a female.
And this one doesn't really look like any of the others. Thank you, guys.
Pot belly and old man boobs.
This one doesn't really look like the others, but I remember when Harvey Pratt saw this one, he said that he had done a similar one that had the bald spot, like on the forehead. That he had worked with a witness that had seen that. She's got such an unusual nose.
Yeah, she does.
And then this one, which I don't know where to place her. Like I don't, she has very human eyes, but she had a little prognathism, it seems.
Yeah.
But beautiful, like, Mark from British Columbia said she was beautiful and graceful. And
yeah, I would, you can imagine not being as terrified seeing her as you would seeing a big male.
Yeah, which is the next one. That's him. And he looks more like an ancient, like one of our ancient relic hominids. Like, in fact, that's what Mark said. He said this looked like an ancient human.
We're gonna get Mark on the show sometime, but this guy was so big, his face was so big that he was so tall he had to lean down to get under the eaves of the house, and there was a big
picture
window, and this thing's kind of leaned in. I mean, this far away on the other side of the glass. I mean, he said his face was like this. It was massive.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, it's huge. So, but look at the big round eyes.
Yeah.
And most people don't see the whites of their eyes, but then some witnesses do see the whites of their eyes. There's just no predicting. Look at the cheekbones, really almost like this, like an egg. This one's, so we started with real apish, and we're moving more and more towards the real human. This one's very, and she said to me, she goes, the one I saw looked very, very, and this was in Southern California, very, very Native American. And it was just kind of mad that we saw it. And it ran right in front of their car, like literally just feet away from their car.
Yeah. Crazy.
And this was a female. Now she looks a little bit like a cross between. She reminds me a little bit of the Planet of the Apes. A little bit, like she has some similar.
Hey, has anyone ever mentioned in all these interviews them having braids in their hair?
No.
I mean, if they're braiding horses' manes, why would they not braid their hair?
That is a very good question. Hair? That is a really good question, Jim. You would think that you would see that they would have some dreadlocks and some.
Yeah. You would think, but I've never heard that story.
I've never heard, no one has ever said that they have seen braids in their hair. And then this was the most human. This is recent with Jason from Oregon.
Yeah, there's people that believe Patty had braids.
Really?
Pilates believes that she had braids down the back.
Oh, I have not seen that.
A ponytail. I mean, it's hard because the video is just so fast, and there's not but that's a lot of people seem to believe that. So
I have not seen that. I would like to see that. Most people say there's kind of a cape, like there's kind of a cape of hair that comes off the shoulders and down the back. Yeah, look at this face.
That's amazing. No hair, zero hair on that face.
Zero hair, and just the sweetest. And it had, look at the whites of its eyes.
It was female, I take it.
No,
or not. No.
Well, yeah, it was
very pretty male. Put it that way.
He saw it when it stood up to leave. It was a male. Yeah. And you can see kind of the skin. A lot of people will see skin underneath the hair and everything. Yeah. So, and I'm working with a woman that also saw a very human-looking one, it reminds me of an Eskimo. Like her female reminds me of an Eskimo woman, and hopefully I can get her on soon. And then the one that you're going to see later this week, very human, like entirely human.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
I do hope more people that are seeing the human looking faces will come forward and do witness sketches with me if that's what they saw, that they're not afraid to share what they saw with us.
We'll try and figure out if this has been happening. I mean, if someone says, yeah, I saw one 50 years ago and it was very human, that's one thing. But if people, so it'd be interesting to figure out if they're looking more and more human, or just people who've seen the human ones are now coming forward. So
I just think maybe there would just, like the woman that I'm going to be publishing her story, she said she got kind of shamed by people when she said what she saw was human. Like, that's not what they look like.
Oh, come on. Big hairy human.
You saw something else.
Yeah. Exactly.
They've said some really disparaging things to her, which I think is awful.
Yeah.
Because she said it was human looking. That's just not right.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree. Well, thank you for showing off all those.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. I love to show off. I love to show what people are seeing out there.
Absolutely.
And just look at the diversity. I mean,
just like us, just like all of us, we look so different from each other. And I've done pictures like this. I'm not going to show them tonight, but I've done pictures of a very tall Norwegian man standing next to a pygmy, and you would look at those two and say, they're not from the same planet,
different species.
and then put the Norwegian man next to a Sasquatch, and they're both large, just one's hairy. And, so is it that big of a stretch to think there's people we call the Sasquatch, that there's people that are large and hairy? I mean, there's pygmies, the opposite end of the extreme, who are 3 feet tall. And so, it's just,
and they're still human.
They're still human. They're 100% human. So,
there's just so much we don't know.
I know.
That's the thing. There's just so much we don't know.
Yeah.
And, I hope as time goes on, people will be more willing to let go of that box that they want to put the Sasquatch in. They all look like this, or they all look like that. They just look like how they just are. What people are seeing are just so diverse and so.
Yeah.
To me, it's amazing. I mean, when someone comes to me and they said, "I want you to draw what I saw," I get so excited because I cannot wait to see what they saw.
To see what comes out. Yeah. Well, thankfully, you've got the ability to do it so that it comes out the way they want it to come out. So.
It's also their ability to communicate to me. What they've seen.
And I'm sure some do a better job of that than others.
That's where Zoom is such an incredible tool, because there have been times when people are trying to communicate something to me, or, and I'm just not getting it. And then I can go on Zoom and they can literally, I can screen share with them and they can literally point to me, this right here, that's what's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's, if you could enlarge that, or you can make that smaller, or you could change that angle. And it's like, oh, that's what you're talking about. So there's great tools now for doing that and for making those adjustments.
And you've got enough references to show them something like what they want to look at, but it's different from that.
To start, to start, we get there eventually. And sometimes it takes me like 15 iterations to get it right.
Yeah.
And I don't care. Sometimes I get it right like on the first or second one.
Yeah. And your work is very different from Harvey's, but both very accurate, I think, to what the people saw. So,
well, I tell them I tell them don't quit, until we've got it exactly. I mean, or some people will just say, well, that's as close as we're going to be able to get it.
Don't give up trying to explain this. Yeah.
No. Well, since these things don't like to be photographed. Like their hatred for cameras and for being, being on a camera.
Yep.
And how they know what a camera is.
I don't know. Who knows?
That's a whole nother show. The incredible ways we have tried to hide cameras, and then we get busted every single time.
We get busted every time.
Every time. I don't care.
So
Flower
they're
pots.
smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah, they're a lot smarter than we are, I think.
Yeah.
Or they just have abilities that we maybe used to have and we don't.
There's a couple photos I want to show you
yes,
that
Wayne,
I haven't shown you yet.
Yes, Wayne, there have been a couple.
That tried to fool you. Yeah.
Yes, there have been a couple.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So I told you a story briefly. I didn't tell you what happened, but I told Sybilla that so I'll just tell the story quickly. It's an amazing story. About 4 years ago, maybe our first year of the Bigfoot Adventure Weekend, I had a few weeks before that I had seen eye glow for the first time in this one area, actually the area Wayne just went to, and so I took a group back. There were 5 of us, one of whom is a veteran and had like a Gen 1 something green night vision goggles, all right, military specs. You can get much better now, but that right. was what he had. So they were binocular. So he brought those with him, and I took him to the same area, and we were sitting looking in one direction. It was just dark, nothing going on. So I said, but let's move a little bit. So we stood up and we turned, and somebody goes, look, there's lights in the woods. And there was a bunch of lights. Now I'm looking at this wondering, okay, are we looking at Wellington Lake and the campsite? Because there were very obvious lights in the woods. So we all sit back down again, and one of the lights is moving. This is when I realized this was not campsites. One of the lights was moving towards us pretty fast. And then it stopped about halfway, and it just didn't move. So I thought, okay, I know we're not looking at campsites because campfires don't move towards you. And so, but you could see the lights. I mean, we were in pitch black. We didn't have any lights on. It was pitch black, and you could see these lights. So now initially they looked like, let me pull up a picture here real quick.
Like white lights?
Yeah, white. There were different colors, white, orange, red. It looked like, this is not the best picture, but let me share this with you real quick here. So share this screen. So this is kind of what we saw at the beginning. Let me make sure I share the right one. Let's see. Let me go back to my computer real quick, because I don't want to reveal the other one yet. I think it's this one. So this was looking through his eyepiece, trying to get my camera, my iPhone up to his eyepiece. It's really hard to do.
It is hard to do.
But his was magnified so you could see it. And so you could just see lights, like just look like a flashlight in the woods. All right.
Yeah.
Different heights. Now this is all green, but they weren't all green. Obviously, this is the military.
It's the night vision. Yeah.
Night vision. So that one was we could just see the light. So then we can take that one down, Steph. Then let me share a different one. So when we zoomed in with our iPhones, we could see. Let me stop that one. And we saw this. Now this is taking your iPhone, and then he zoomed in, and make sure this is the right one. Nope, let me go back. Sorry. It's the other one. They look the same on my screen until I blow them up. That's the problem. So I think it's this one. see, is that right? Put that one up. Is this? Now, this is hard to tell, but share that one, and you can see that when he zoomed in, I wish we could blow it up more. You can see that they're pairs of eyes. All right. Each of those lights was a pair of eyes. And there were 15 to 17 of them, all in the tree line, watching us. And I think I've got one that we blew it up even more. Let me see.
That's creepy.
It is creepy. Let me just find that other one, because it's this one shows them far better. Here we go. Okay, let me share that.
Oh, that was creepy.
Yeah, wait till you see this one. This is.
How close did they get to you guys? Oh, dang!
They didn't move, but you can see them now. The separation of the eyes. So there were 15, at least 15, like this. They were different heights, different color eyes slightly, but so we sat there. The one was much closer. I didn't get a shot of that one between us and these that you're looking at, but
dang.
We sat there and looked at them, and they watched us for probably 45 minutes. Nobody moved towards the others. I don't know what would have happened if we had started. They probably would have moved back. They would have cleared out, but they were watching us. You could see them blink occasionally. So
Dang.
It was crazy. So that was the most I've ever seen. I tell people, they are not only in groups of 1 and 2 and 3. There are large groups of them sometimes that all come out at once. I've never seen this many again in that location or anywhere else. So I feel really honored to have seen that with those others. And we still talk about it when we get together. That, man, do you remember that? That was incredible.
And where was that? Where did that happen?
This was right near Wellington Lake. This was about 15 miles from the outpost. And the eyes were high. I don't remember how high they were. They were up. I mean, they were, it's hard to say because they were at a bit of a distance from us, but they were definitely up, but they were different heights. They weren't all the same height. And so there were younger ones, older ones. That's just, that was the most dramatic. And again, they were clearly eyes. These were eyes, and they were glowing in the dark. We had no lights on.
Could you see them without the night vision? You could see them?
Without what?
Without the night vision? Could you see them?
Oh, yeah. We could see the light, but we couldn't see the separation into the two eyes because he needed to magnify just a little bit. That's why when I take people out, I tell people, bring your regular binoculars with you, daytime binoculars, because if we see an eye glow and you can get your binoculars up and you can find that eye glow, you're going to see two eyes, not one light. And so it's crazy. And then the last video I'm going to show you, because it's Bigfoot movie night.
How long had y'all been sitting there, Jim, before you saw them?
We were probably looking the wrong direction for 30 minutes. So they were behind us, watching us. And then we got up and turned around. And we're like, oh, look, what's that? And
that's amazing.
And I wasn't even sure what we were looking at first because I have never seen that many. The only time I had seen them before that was there's two of them. But yeah, that was.
So what was the vibe? Like, did y'all get a vibe from them at all?
We weren't afraid. We wouldn't have sat there for 45 minutes if we had been afraid that they were going to attack us or something. That I didn't get any vibe. That was not their interest whatsoever. They were curious, like, what are they doing over there? What are they? And I'm sure they could see the infrared from the goggles probably, but they didn't run away. The infrared didn't make them hide, which was interesting. So yeah, it's
what an experience that
was. It was, and
That's
I will
unforgettable.
never forget that. And I wish I got video evidence more often of when we're out and something happens. And so this video I'm going to show you is the only other time I've gotten video evidence of one of them being at my tent and what I saw from inside. But I was camping with Jason. We had backpacked in about 2 miles maybe into the Goose Creek Trail. It was, Jason loves to go out like the end of March. I don't know why. I mean, it's so cold. End of March, April, snow on the ground everywhere. So we go in, he brought his 2 dogs, and we set up our camp. So that night, you guys mentioned lights, like little battery operated lights. So I had a string of those. We used to sell them at the outpost. So I hung them on a tree, maybe 30 feet from my tent, and turned them all on to green. You can make them whatever color, you want, but I put them all green. And so I could see the light from inside my tent, once we're in bed and all the lights are out. So the lights were on one side of my tent. Jason is in his tent with his dogs on the other side. And I'm in a small tent. It's maybe 4 foot high or something. So for some reason, I wake up about 3 a.m. Jason was also awake. I found out later. And the creek is making a lot of noise. Goose Creek is flowing right next to us. So we both hear something get thrown into the water, sploosh, like a rock, right? Mm-hmm. I thought, oh, okay, what's going on? Then we both hear something walking across the creek, sploosh, sploosh, sploosh. And I thought, okay, here we go, and just right then, as I got the other side of the creek, the lights turned off in the bush on the tree. Okay, wow. That's a weird coincidence that we hear these footsteps, and it was bipedal footsteps coming across the creek, and then the lights go off. And to turn those lights off, there's a little box with a button. You got to push that button to turn them off. How do they know how to do that? So the lights went off, and then his dog starts growling in the tent next to me. So I'm like, okay, there's something out there for sure. So I had at that time on my iPhone, you could buy a little attachment to turn your iPhone into a thermal.
Yes,
right? Thermal
I've got one.
So I snapped that on, and I'm lying there in my sleeping bag, and I'm thinking maybe I can see. Now I was new to thermals at the time, so maybe I can see outside the tent. Maybe it'll tell me if there's something outside the tent, which they can't. But so I just start filming around the inside of the tent. So I'm going to have Steph put this video up and go make sure it's at the beginning. Yeah, it is. So just play that, and I'm going to comment as we go. So I'm just filming with a thermal inside the tent. All right. And of course you can't see outside the tent. So
what?
So I'll show you right about now. Okay, pause it. So the shadow, this dark part you see, is something on the outside pushing in. That's what's making the color differentiation. Now, at the time, I didn't notice that on the screen because my iPhone screen was small. So this thing was out there pushing, kneeling, I guess, by my tent because my tent was so low. So just keep playing it. It's pushing on it. I didn't even notice this till the next day. You'll see the hand move back and forth. And I think it was trying to see if there was any response from inside the tent. So I'm just like, okay. And I'm still moving I must have noticed something, but I didn't think about it being what it is, because you'll see where my feet are in just a second. It may have been more than one.
Oh, there's your feet, right?
There's my feet. So, I mean, it was really low. and I should have pulled my feet back. I mean, my feet were right underneath where they were pushing, and yeah. So again, I'm just kind of not really cluing into what's going on outside. So I just keep filming and filming. And it was the next morning I show it to Jason. He goes, "Holy crap!" And I looked at it again. I thought, "Oh yeah, I guess you're right." But I think they were actually pushing down by my feet now that I look at it.
Yeah.
So I've had them do this again since then, but I've never filmed it. And so they just kept messing. I probably for 5 minutes, they were just pushing on the tent. You can hear the vinyl, the sound of something moving back and forth on the vinyl. So yeah, they see the tent and they think it's a burrito. Even more so my hammock now, they think, I'm sure it looks like a big burrito.
Yeah.
But again, they just keep pushing. There's my feet. That's how low they were pushing on that tent. So
Wow.
this is 3:30 in the morning. So had I realized what was going on, I don't think I would have stayed so calm. I just kept filming. I probably would have yanked my feet back, but they didn't touch my feet. Yeah, you can hear the nylon. So anyway, we can stop. So
that's amazing.
It was amazing. So let's see. So that night we had that happen. The next night, a couple other people, Jason's wife came and a guy named Lou came, Lou French. And the first night Lou was there, I was there with him. Now, I don't remember this. Lou was sleeping in a bivy sack, which is basically a sleeping bag inside of a big bag. It's not a tent. It's just lying on the ground with a pad. And that first night, twice, Lou said he dreamt something was dragging him out of the camp by his feet, and he screamed. He said, "I screamed like a little girl." I don't remember that. And then he felt like he was turned one direction and something poked him in the back. Oof. So that happened that first night, but he wasn't sure. Maybe it was a dream, So then I had to hike out because I had to come back to the store. And that last night, Lou has never slept in the bivy sack again. He's only slept in a tent since then, but he's lying in the bivy sack. So next to between him and the creek were that double tree that went up like this. So he's lying here, then the double tree, and then the creek down below. And Jason had hung a line between the two trees with all of the kitchen stuff hanging from it, because we just leave stuff out intentionally for them to mess with.
Right.
So it just happened to be right above Lou. So Lou's lying there, and he wakes up, and he looks up, and he sees Jason standing there flipping the stuff like this. And he's like, "Why is Jason messing with the utensils?" And then, and obviously it wasn't Jason. And all of a sudden it realized he was looking at it, and it quickly ducked down. I mean, it was, when Jason stood up the next day, it was way taller than Jason. Right. What he saw, what he looked at. It ducked down, and then I guess it ran off or something. Okay. But it knew Lou was sleeping right there. I mean, 2 feet away, 3 feet away. And it was sitting there playing with this stuff, like, it was assuming Lou was asleep. When it knew he was awake, then it didn't want to be there anymore. It didn't want to be seen. Just like a kid. It was just messing around with the stuff, like the spatula and other stuff hanging from this thing. So and they found tracks in the morning kind of going back and forth in between the tent and the creek. And then Al, in October we're using tents for sure. And I'll probably use my hammock again, but we'll see. We'll see how Patricia feels, but we might just do one big tent and I'll stay in the one big tent. But
that'd be cool.
That's the when people feel safer is when we're all in a tent together instead of being individually in tents. But
it's amazing just how you can have a tent right next to you.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's 5 feet away, but when these things come into your camp, that tent feels like it's 5 miles away. Like you feel so alone.
You're alone.
You feel so alone and so vulnerable and so isolated.
That's why I call my book, which I haven't finished yet, but it's called Alone with Bigfoot, because when you're in your tent, for all intents and purposes, you are alone. Even though there's other people in the camp, you're by yourself in your tent, and whatever happens is going to happen unless you scream and say, help me, whatever. But we never do that. I've never been with guys who yelled in the middle of the night. But so you're just kind of lying there. You're thinking, okay, what happens, especially in my hammock. I'm like, hell, they could grab me. They could pick me up, put me down. I mean, they could do all kinds of stuff with me.
They could be gone. They could be 5 miles away. They could be 100 yards away before people even sit up in their tents.
Right. So, and the tent, what's a tent? It's a little thin nylon or canvas. It's nothing.
It's nothing.
I mean, they could grab that tent and just drag you all over Kingdom Come if they wanted to, but they just have never done that. So,
fortunately, they have.
Fortunately, not done that yet. Yes, thank you. Yeah,
but you've heard.
And I would scream. I would definitely scream in that.
But you've heard of stories where they've moved huge canvas tents with people in them, like a foot or two.
Yeah. Like, well, we've had them trip over the guy wires.
Yes.
Where you're lying there and your whole tent goes goo, 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 like this. Like they kicked the wire and like, what was that? And then you know what it was. You can kind of hear the twang as they do it. And so I've got black guy wires on my hammock. So I tie yellow stuff on them. So I'm like, Sasquatch, please see this. I don't want you to trip over this, and then my hammock's going to go and I'm going to go off the side or whatever. So
or trip and fall on you,
or trip and fall on me.
Yeah, I mean, if they fell into your tent, you could like seriously die just from the weight.
Oh yeah. So yeah, the funny stories we've got. So well, there you go, the Jim and Sybilla show. That getting dragged off in the wilderness is all I'm thinking about when I'm in my They just don't do it. Trust me, if they were dragging people off, other researchers, I would have heard about it so would Sybilla. We'd have heard about it a long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't know any researcher who's ever disappeared, been physically aggressed by a Sasquatch, or been drugged, and there's hundreds of us doing this around the country.
No, so, I think Ostman was in a sleeping bag.
Well, Ostman got picked up, but again, since Ostman, that's never happened again.
But I don't think he was in a tent.
No, he was just sleeping out in the open in a sleeping bag.
Yeah, he was just out in the open in his tent. I mean, in his sleeping bag, and it just grabbed him and slung it up, and he went to the bottom of his sleeping bag, and it
carried him for a long time,
miles.
And that's why, Les Stroud, when he did his Bigfoot series, and he was sleeping on that mountaintop in his sleeping bag, he put all of his gear inside the bag at the bottom because he thought, if they pick me up and carry me, I want to at least have that stuff with me. So he was thinking, they're gonna get me. But
it could happen, yeah.
And he even said he woke up at one point in the night, and in between dreaming and awake, and he thought something was sitting on him. And then when he came fully awake, there was nothing there. And I thought maybe Sasquatch sat on Les in the night. I think you would know that. It would probably squish you. But
yeah.
Well, anything else, Sybilla, before we end our show here?
Not that I can think of. I mean, we have so many stories. We haven't even scratched the surface of the weird stuff that's happened on expeditions and that we've experienced. Like the Colorado expedition, I think it was 2008, was like the most outrageous things happened. I could do just a whole hour show just on what happened. we could get Dennis and Shannon on and talk about that one expedition. And Jason Frank was there, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. We need to get them on anyway. But
that would be fabulous because their story and how it all started with them. I'd love for people to hear it. And they're just such fantastic
let's
people.
do it. I'll reach out to Dennis and see when they're both going to be home, and we'll get them on.
That would be fabulous. I would love that. That would just tickle me to death.
We could do the Jim and Sybilla show every week, but after a while you get tired of it. So we got to get some other people on the show. Yeah. This is why I had Sybilla. One of the reasons why I wanted her as my co-host, because I know she's got tons of stories. And so
I just been blessed.
You ain't scared of nothing, girl. You go out in the Cherokee National Forest by yourself for 4 months. I'm telling you what.
I know. Maybe it's just insanity.
I don't know. It's a Sasquatch insanity is what it is. But,
well, here's the thing. It's, when some things happen to you that you cannot explain. You got, there's two kinds of people. You're either going to just throw it under the rug and ignore it, or you're going to explore because it was real for you. And some of us are just, that's the way our brains are wired. We're just going to dig in and see what we can discover and try to learn like what the true nature of this reality is.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
So I may see if I can get Dennis and Shannon on next week, because I don't think we have a guest right now. So
I would love.
I'm going to do my best to get them on there.
Like we could talk for an hour just on what happened on that one expedition.
And that's what we'll do.
It was insane.
Talk about that expedition. So that was when Shannon had her emotional experience, right? Where it scared her to death. I believe.
I don't know. I know. I think it started trying to unzip the tent. Like there was.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I know what happened now. I'm not gonna give that one away because that's too rich. So.
Yeah.
Yes. The rabbit hole gets deeper.
Yeah. I never went to sleep on that one night. Like literally stayed awake the entire night because of what was going on in the campground, like where we were.
Well, and I'm hoping I'm gonna get Sybilla. I'm gonna get her out here before long, and we're gonna come up with some stories ourselves. So
make some memories
on the show. Make some memories. All righty. Well,
hey, Jim, what would be cool? Cool is to get these beautiful people in the chat room and get them on an expedition with us.
Oh yeah. Well, we need to do that. Can't do it with horses. I don't have enough horses, but we can get on a camping expedition easy. So
that'd be so cool.
That would be. So we got to set something like that up where we can get a bunch of people to come with us and build some memories together. That's a great idea. Let's do that.
Have a chat room. Call it the
chat room only camping trip. If you're not in the chat room, you cannot come. No. All righty. Well, y'all have been an awesome audience. Thank you for your wonderful comments and questions, and you keep us going by interacting with us throughout the show. Yeah, by being here.
Absolutely. We love you guys.
We sure do. And until next week, and we'll see what happens next week, y'all keep on squatching.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.